All right. Hey, Barker, did you know it was a long weekend?
Nope. Do now. No idea. Calling my wife. Why isn't nobody on the highway?
Stay hot. Yes, stay hot indeed. It is an off day for the Toronto Blue Jays before they start a series against the Baltimore Orioles at the Rogers Center on Tuesday. The Jays coming off a weekend series against the New York Yankees where they lost 2 of 3.
They competed.
They competed, lost 4-3, walked off in 10 innings, lost 8-3, won 8-5. It was funny because the lineup gets posted yesterday, and Springer's not in the lineup. So I'm going, okay, I just want to check. I'm just going to check social media to see how people are reacting to this, because I'm hoping we've all moved beyond even looking at the Blue Jays lineup, because John Schneider's come out and said, look, we're going to be playing, you're going to be seeing a whole bunch of stuff you haven't seen so far, such as Ernie Clement leading off yesterday. So it seems people have kind of bought in. There were some people, we're George Springer, we have a chance to win a series against the Yankees, yada, yada. No. People seem to have understood that. They seem to have bought into it.
Bought into losing?
They've bought into the fact that the lineup is that basically they're going to see, the Jays want to see all these guys. It's more important to see guys like Barger and Loperfido and pick a guy than it is, frankly, to see Springer. You know what George Springer is, right?
Yeah, it's a day game after a night game on a dude that's on the back nine.
The problem, again, though, you're not, you're going to see,
about the player
you're going to see
it.
This is the summer of De Los Santos. Let's just say it as it is. De Los Santos, Jimenez, anyhow, the point is you're going to be seeing a lot of guys who, if this team was in first place, would be hitting up a storm in Buffalo for the rest of the year. So that's fine. But the 5th inning yesterday, Kevin, our boy John Schneider takes Yariel Rodriguez out after 4 2/3. So it was the 76, 77 pitches. He's leading 2-0.
Ready to look it up. It's 76 pitches.
76 pitches. He's leading 2-0.
Yep.
And, of course, Yariel Rodriguez, as all good starting pitchers, not happy, yada, yada, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, it works out swimmingly.
Who cares
for John Schneider? Brendan Little comes in and walks Soto. He gives an intentional walk to Judge, walks Wells. And this is my point. And, of course, people immediately flame John Schneider. Why didn't John Schneider leave him in? Isn't this about finding out what you got for next year? Why don't you let Yariel Schneider go through?
Yeah.
All right, I want to ask you about that, because I didn't think twice about it. My first thought was, you know what? I want to find out if Brendan Little's got big enough stones to pitch at Yankee Stadium in a game. So that's what I'm more interested in.
Well, you found that out. He doesn't.
Yeah, but I'm okay. But I need to find that out. I think I kind of know what Yariel Rodriguez is.
Yeah, he has mechanical flaws. He's got an inconsistent arm slot. You sort of know what that is already. The most pitches he's thrown is 83 pitches. You got a lefty getting loose in the pen. You got the best left-handed hitter and the best hitter, period, walking earth coming up. It's got 76 pitches. If he faces the lefty, because there's a lefty getting loose and not a righty, he's got to face the righty too. He ain't going to do that. Like this, that's, the 83 pitches is the mark. John said that. He ain't coming back out for the next inning. I'd rather have a lefty facing the lefty than him facing the best 2 hitters that the Yankees have third time through. It's not rocket science. They know what they got already. Like it's, a guy that hadn't pitched all year and coming off one of the worst starts in the history of the sport. And he's done a decent job with just keeping it in the the right lane and making the 2 secondary pitches look like they should be looking. And fastball command was at least competitive and tougher takes, which got him to where he got him to. And that 83 pitch mark is sort of the thing, right? I just don't, I'm getting the same text, and we're getting him on later at 5 o'clock, who texts me and yelling at me and screaming and saying, why is this not happening? And you need to find out what you got. They know what they got.
Talking about Caleb Joseph.
It's not rocket science on what you're seeing from Yariel Rodriguez. Like, again, baseball is not rocket science. They try sometimes, to turn it into that. It's not. You can use your eyeballs and, if you watch enough baseball, know what a guy can and can't do. And This is more about, the momentum. I've said this to you. Like, they're the guys that mean something next year, they're trying to gain momentum going into that time. They have a certain number because of what a guy didn't do last year. When they get to that number, they get to that batter, he's coming out. Like, it's real simple. I mean, John said that in the pregame show. Hazel and Shai reported that John Snyder and the organization have come to the realization of what I just said. This is going to happen consistently going forward, right? It's whichever one comes first.
And I got to say
the number or the batter.
And I got to say this, with the Ariel Rodriguez, I'm not certain it would matter whether or not the team was contending or not contending, because they knew going into the year that they were faced with a guy who hadn't pitched a lot in recent years. And, again, I keep talking about this. You've only got options on this guy. This is next year. You can't option him up and down with that unless you put him on waivers. This is the year you find out what you have. And, and
the shaking the head and the walking off and the pouting. Come on, man.
Oh, whatever. I mean, guys do that.
Yeah, they need to stop.
Guys do that all the time. Guys do that. That's not unusual.
It's an awful look.
It's not unusual. It's
not a good look.
Well, of course it's not a good look, but you're making it sound like he's the first guy to ever do it.
Well, don't do it again. How's that? I think that's where the organization's at, right? Is when you are where you're at as a pitcher, you're where you're at as an organization. You're trying to just sort of, fill in the blanks with what you think you may be trying to fill in the blanks with going into next season. Seems like Ariel Rodriguez is going to be one of them guys because of what they paid him. And what you just mentioned is next year they're not going to be able to send him down. Next year he is what he is. He's on the team. He's going to have to work through these things. So hand the ball to the manager, walk off, and then you can be visibly frustrated in the tunnel, yelling and screaming at whoever you want to yell and scream at.
Did you like what you saw from him up to that
Absolutely. Point? Like that, the stuff is playing. Like, if, the start and stop thing, I mean, you can't take it all away from him. They're trying to just sort of refine it and when they use it. Because what happens is when he starts and stops, it's like Varsho offensively. When you do the stride separating thing and you start and stop momentum, things tend to play catch up. Things tend to sort of fall because of gravity. You've noticed whenever he starts and stops and sort of does that thing he does, arm slot gets down, elbow gets under the baseball, ball don't go where he wants it to go. It's either that little two-seamer, it runs middle, four-seamer is outer third instead of up, away, down, where he wants it. He's missing location, and the breaking ball, slider, whichever one he's throwing at the time. That's why you see Kirky, who did a really, really good job with him when it come to just certain counts of, I want it here. I don't want it here. To make sure you stay on top of that thing, get it out and break it off. Like, that's a good way to go, Kirky. It's amazing what happens when you're hitting, how much better you look defensively. It's funny how that works. But it just absolutely, like, you can see, you close your eyes, if he could just refine some things and find a happy medium with the arm slot and just consistently throw some, a few more strike ones, which will help him be a little bit more unpredictable with the natural cutter. And if he wants to throw the two-seamer and the four-seamer and the two different breaking balls, and the split finger was really good. Like the split finger to lefty, that thing plays if you're ahead in the count. If you're competitive with the fastball, keep it around. Just don't be non-competitive, right? Non-competitive means it's a ball out of the hand. Right away, I see it. I know it's a ball. I'm thinking about the next pitch before the catcher throws it back. If he can stay away from those, and you see that, that stuff that he's throwing up there, it's good stuff. And he didn't shy away from the short porch and right, which is a big deal. No, a lot of dudes do that. Like, they'll, not throw certain pitches in certain counts in certain locations because that little short porch, he didn't do that. He attacked guys. Good for him.
I mean, the other talking point out of the weekend, too, and, of course, this was bound to happen, especially given the fact that the games are in New York. But John Schneider, the way he pitched around or intentionally walked Aaron Judge, which, I mean, I'm going to let you have your take on it because it broke me up when you said.
It's an easy take.
It's an easy decision.
You have Austin Wells on the on-deck circle.
Thank you. I was going to say, because Juan Soto was a little critical of the Jays. And my response is the same as, who cares?
Who cares what you say? I will say this, that dude rakes. Juan Soto can do things to baseballs that, again, man, it's like if you miss a little bit of location – even if you're a left-hander like Cabrera and you want to go away with a fastball on a 2-1 count and you miss a little middle, even if it is down. I mean, it's a decent pitch that he hit for the home run. It's the fact that you missed by inches, and you do because of the way he can manipulate the barrel and just sort of the legs with where he starts sort of dictates him being able to have the barrel go to different quadrants, and now you're just having your eyes adjust that barrel and having it end up where it needs to go. And he's not afraid to go the other way, which is a big deal, right? You want to hit 300? I think he's hitting, last time I checked, like 307 off the lefties and 308 off the righties. Like, it is ridiculous. And the things he's doing with 2 strikes. So, yeah, if you're the Yankees, woe is me, and want to continue to put Austin Wells in the cleanup spot, if you're an opposing team and you run into some games that matter, excuse me, against the Yankees, and you got a lefty out there that you want to, throw against Soto, throw against Wells, Judge will never swing the bat. Ever, ever, ever. Well, so if you're a Yankees fan, get used to it.
My whole reaction to this was similar to yours. Playoffs roll around, folks. You're going to see a lot of that. If you're going to continue to have that guy batting cleanup. Wells batting cleanup. You're going to see a lot of that. I love what John Schneider's line. I mean, to me, just hang this up. The less times he can swing, the better. Makes perfect sense to me.
I mean, he hits balls to the moon. Like, it's, it's like ask Barrios how it is. Like, it's just you ask Gosman how it is. Like
3 more home runs given up by Jose Barrios.
Yeah, I mean, I think the weather had something to do with it. I'm not making excuses for him because it's been a rough start for him. It's just, you have some bad luck sprinkled in there. You got some bad pitching sprinkled in there. He's obviously fighting some mechanics. The slurve hasn't been good for a while. I mean, that is a giant pitch for him when he's the sinker slurve guy.
Do you have any thoughts on why that is the case?
Throwing it a lot.
You think it's simply that?
He has to throw it a lot. Yeah. I think if it's not mechanically perfect, like it was a little while for about a month and a half when he could just backdoor it, front hip it. He could throw it more like a slider. He had 3 different, spins to it. Like, it was more of, okay, I'm so mechanically sound. I'm not thinking about that. I'm over the rubber. I'm strong. The timing of the ball coming out of the glove, the release point, all of that stuff's on point. I don't ever have to think about that. Now it's just where I want to start it. So it ends up the way I want it to end up. Now he's just flipping it in there hoping it breaks. That's never a good thing. So, yeah, I think he's thrown a lot. I said this about Gosman. That innings pitched and how many times he's made his starts, they may need to start thinking about that the end of the year here.
Yeah.
You want him at his best going into the offseason. I know, nobody doesn't want to make their start, and these games don't mean anything. That's why I asked John about this. You worried about them 3 big guys? I would be. That's me. Like, they are a big deal getting off to a really, really good start next year. They have thrown a ton.
Yeah,
and mentally it has been they ain't doing their thing. The big 3's got to do everything. And now, when Manoah gets hurt like it was last year and you bring nobody in to help us, and we're he's skipping starts and it's a 4-man rotation. Man, it's like, yeah. So I would, as an organization, you're going to have to sit down. Now, again, sometimes you got to be the grown up in the room and not always go and ask. Right. It is respectful to ask and be on the same page and those kind of things. But you can strongly suggest that, we've seen what you look like. We've seen that maybe instead of getting 9 more starts, you get 6 more starts.
And, kind of thing. I wonder, Kevin, if that wasn't part of the and Kevin Gossman didn't reveal everything that was said in that meeting before Friday's game that John Schneider had with the veterans. But I wonder if that wasn't part of the message as well. But I'm sure guys like Bassett and Gossman, they probably figured that out by now.
I don't know. I think
they've probably figured out that let me put it another way. They probably would not be surprised.
Yeah, I'm not sure that had anything to do with an individual thing. I think that was more the organization trying to say, we understand your frustration. We'll fix it. I'm sure that's what it was. Like them 3 dudes, I've been around so long that it's almost like they're making their own plan. This is what I said, the grown up in the room. It's like when you go out and get the ball from the pitcher, act like you've handed the ball to the manager before. It's that kind of thing, right? So I'm sure they'll have conversations. But how can you not be worried? Yeah. Like, I know he looked a little bit better, and, in his last start, I think he went to 7 innings. That slurve, slider, curveball thing that he was throwing in that start, that's the way it's supposed to look like. It just looks to me like he's consistently having trouble, stringing that together, and then it just puts a lot of pressure on command and unpredictability and, the sequencing of all those things. And it's just asking a lot from a lot of guys to be almost perfect. And, hopefully to do that. I mean, I don't know if they have enough. Yarborough could help, I'm sure. Bowden Francis, I'm sure, could help.
This was the next.
It's just you had to who.
That was
but does it matter?
I mean,
I don't even know if it matters.
No, I'm sure you can pull somebody up from AAA and
more about them three being raring and ready to go going into next season because of what you're going to ask from them.
Where things get kind of interesting, and I'm not going to say this is going to happen. So don't run around and say that Blair thinks that they're going to make the playoffs, because obviously I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. The schedule gets really mushy though. After the Orioles, like you got a lot of,
if they got the worst bullpen in the sport.
This is true.
I don't even know why you're bringing this up.
No, what I'm saying is I'm hoping that they keep that way, and that they keep that approach, and that they don't get fooled by anything here. Because I'm with you. To me, the most important thing is get those 3 guys lined up, get them lined up mentally and physically for next year. Because
find out if Ernie Clement can play a little bit more third or short. If you try to trade Bo, he may be in more of the mix, right? Because of the lack of holes that he has offensively. You can run him out there against multiple really good pitchers, and he can give you a competitive at bat. He can put a ball hard and play to the big part of the field. It's just the other guys. Like, you can't have all of the same kind of guy on your team next year. That for me is what they got to figure out, right? Varsho's obviously on your team. Varsho has giant holes in his swing. He's not a tough out.
No.
Like, he's just not. You can't have, Loperfido and Schneider, and I'm not saying Horowitz is in that mix, but, you got to find out if all of these guys are – who's your big 2 in that? I guess it's Horowitz and Clement. And then out of the other mix – are they a part of the future, or is that the group that you may use to get what you need going into next season? Like maybe an everyday catcher, like maybe a true number 3 starter because of what you've seen from the 3 guys that you're going to count on. Maybe go out and maybe trade for you a closer. Like this is what I think, hopefully, that they're trying to do, and I'm sure they are. Like, wins and losses is – John, I think, is trying to win games just by the way he was going and attacking Judge. He's different. I know what you're going to say. It's more about, let's see what the 2 lefties in the pen have gotten. Are they good enough to come into Yankee Stadium and get key outs against certain guys?
No, I'm not
when it's the loudest.
I'm not saying that at all, because that wasn't Judge. He came in to face Soto. I have no problem with – no, listen, that's what I'm saying.
Getting the 2 lefties is the point. And even John said that. If you don't get Soto, we're walking Judge, you're getting Wells. That's the point.
That's what I'm saying. I have no problem with that. I want to find out – I'm more interested in what Brendan Little is than what Yariel Rodriguez is, because I think I know what Yariel Rodriguez is. I think I know what Brendan Little is as well. But you know what? You got to find out to make sure, because, again, you're looking at adding a ton of bullpen arms next year. And you're probably not going to be able to go out and add 6 new bullpen arms. You're going to have some guys who are here this year come back and do something. I want to move on because we haven't talked about Vladdy yet. Yeah, I mean, this year is all about Vladdy from this point on, I guess, and whether or not the Jays sign him. That is the storyline. Whether or not the Jays front office likes it or not, that's really the only question they need to. Well, I mean, it's the only question anybody wants answered, to be honest. And so far, they've kind of skirted the issue. Whenever it's
Wednesday,
been put to
Mr. Shapiro is talking. So,
Vladdy, you asked last week, is this the best we've seen him since that MVP season? And
yes.
I'm saying I can't remember off the top of my head, but watching him in New York, I'm thinking, yeah. And then hearing Aaron Judge talk about him as well, I'm thinking, yeah. He, I know we've talked about this. What is the difference? Because I want to go over it again. What is the difference with him mechanically?
Yeah, look, I think it's a few things. Again, I don't want to downplay what he's doing, but again, I think a lot of it does have to do with where they're at in the standings and
pressure's off.
Absolutely. Okay. I think that has a little something to do with it. Now, not taking anything away from him. This is why I was saying in the last 2 off seasons, go get somebody who's legit, who can carry your team for a couple of weeks if you want to see the best out of Vladdy starting the season, not 2 or 3 months into the season when they're out of it, when the season starts, because you have an aircraft carrier either hitting in front of him or behind him, take pressure off the shortstop and the first baseman, and now they can just go up and be free and easy. It's not a coinky-dink that the best season he's ever had who was around him. Again, it's about the ballpark maybe that he was playing in, but there was a lot of thump around him. Like, guys were doing some things. I do think this is the best I've seen him sit in his legs. Like, he's using his legs better than he's ever used them, meaning that front foot starts on time, and it's just the separation from when he makes his positive move and what he's trying to do with his hands has never been better. Like, the timing of that has never been more on point, and that allows him, like the double he hit in his first at-bat, Cole throws him a slider down and away. He spits on that thing like he knew what that dude was pushing. I'm throwing a slider down and away. When you're locked in with your lower half, it allows you to keep your eyes from doing, if you're seeing me on TV, this. If my eyes are bouncing, bound, like they have been a lot with him, because he's in between, he's playing catch up with the barrel. The lower half's bouncing. They try to throw the timing off by starting, holding. They make him stand there. Hands drop too low. They're playing catch up. I'm jumpy. Even if you see me jumping out of my seat like this and you're watching me on TV, what's my eyes doing? They're bouncing. What's the ball doing? It's bouncing. You don't see that now. What's that allow him to do? Get to his A swing almost all the time. His A swing is like Aaron Judge's A swing. That's where it's at now, right?
How would you pitch him?
I wouldn't. I'd throw to Horowitz. You afraid of Horowitz? Yeah, I mean, it's not Horowitz's fault. He's hitting some cleanup and.
No, that's what I was wondering. You know, as much as you've seen Judge get that treatment. I understand teams that are playing the Blue Jays aren't going to be. You're not going to be approaching it the same necessarily.
I can tell you
way with the Yankees.
I pitch him the same way I always pitch him: sinkers in, sliders away.
And then that's.
I would force him to have precision with plate awareness.
Right.
That's why he scooted a little off the plate.
So you'd force him to keep doing this.
Absolutely, freed up his hands a little bit. Right? It just made it look freer and easier, and it's effortless. It's like I take the slider down on the way because I'm seeing it. Eyes are not moving out of the hand right away. I know it's spinning. I get the fastball, no matter how hard he's throwing it, because I'm balanced with my lower half. I'm on point in an athletic position with my front foot. I have good directions with my shoulders. I have the best hip rotation probably other than Judge and Soto in the sport right now, and I just hit it where it's pitched. So, I would keep doing the same thing to him. Sliders away, sinkers in.
Now, we'll get to see the Orioles in town this weekend. And we've asked this. This has kind of been one of the running themes this year. After seeing 3 games against the Yankees, like, it's going to be fun to compare and contrast where the Orioles are now. After seeing 3 games against the Yankees.
Mm-hmm. Yankees drill.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this, the Guardians the best team in the American League, and they're pushing in the sport.
They split. Now, they split with the Orioles there. I was going to ask you about that because we focus on Orioles-Yankees. I'm with you. I mean, unless Garrett Cole suddenly, even if it all comes together for him, the bullpen doesn't really do it for me.
I think it's their lineup.
You mentioned that Austin Wells hitting.
Other than the 2 guys, I mean, they don't have a leadoff hitter. They don't have a cleanup hitter. Their defense is spotty.
It seems to me, you know what one of the ways, and I went back watching the game yesterday, went back and looked at some of the stuff that was written in spring training, and it had, and I think it might have been. I'm trying to think who it was. I don't know if it was Jack Curry, but it was in spring training, and somebody made the point that the Yankees were really counting on DJ LeMahieu. Like, they put a lot on DJ LeMahieu. There was talk that he was going to be their leadoff guy. Same Alex Verdugo, but they were really banking on getting something out of LeMahieu. And I just don't. I don't know if you can do that.
Yeah, I don't know
if you can do that.
I'm not sure the American League's top heavy anymore. It used to be Yankees, Orioles, and nobody else. Now you could make an argument for the Orioles. I guess you could make an argument for the Yankees, the Guardians, the Twins, the Mariners, the Astros. I'm not throwing the Rangers in there. So you got about, 6 teams that you could legitimately say, if any one of the 6 win the American League?
And Barker, I don't know about you, but Gleyber Torres, man, that's...
You don't like him not running? I don't know why people's not used to that. He does that all the time.
No, he does that all the time. He's a guy, and I'm looking at his number. He's just a guy that I keep wanting more from him. Like, I don't see a 235 hitter there. I don't see a guy with what's his OPS plus is 87. His OPS is 60. I just don't see. There's got to be more there, doesn't there?
I think sometimes you are what you are.
He's 27 years old. He's not a kid anymore.
Fighting for a contract. We talk about expectations and about pressure, trying to feed your family and get the big deal. And he hasn't gotten it from the Yankees. Were you hitting him in the order? There's, if you're a team and you figure out how to not pitch the judge, you take your chances of pitching to everybody else, even Soto. Like, I know what Soto does and those kind of things, but I give Soto the solo homer.
Yeah.
I'll give you that. The big boy will not hit a 2 or 3 run homer off me. I'm sorry. It will not happen. And if Austin Wells, other than being a Yankees fan, if you fell on Wells, you wouldn't know who he was. And it's the Yankees.
Yeah.
And Giancarlo Stanton right now, him stepping in the bucket and
there's a whole lot of Trent Grisham going on with that team right
so
now.
They got giant flaws going forward here.
Jazz Chisholm gives them a little bit of athleticism.
But it looks like the Jays are onto something. You can spin it to him. Just keep spinning it. You just don't throw one down the middle.
He's going to...
everybody's got their holes, and I think the Blue Jays may have found one there.
Bill Shaikin is the national baseball writer with the LA Times. There is a intriguing series going on starting tonight, I should say. The Dodgers are hosting the Phillies. It's Glasnow against Nola. We want to talk about that. Also want to talk about Mike Trout. Bill Shaikin's covered just about every aspect of Mike Trout's career. We'll get his take on that. And we'll talk a little bit as well about the Chicago White Sox, who... going for loss number 21 in a row tonight against the Oakland Athletics. Things are so bad that they're honestly thinking of firing Pedro Grifol and making Charlie Montoyo the manager. It's Blair and Barker on Sportsnet 590, The Fan and Sportsnet. All right, welcome back to Blair and Barker on Sportsnet 590, The Fan. Good news, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Has been named Player of the Week for the American League. Congratulations to Vladdy Jr.
Well deserved.
Yeah, he's been he has been on a heater now for 20 odd games. So there you go. And
15 for 28, 8 runs, 3 homers, 8 RBIs, 4 walks, 3 strikeouts.
Yeah,
bang bang boom.
I think Buck Martinez mentioned yesterday. They showed a stat over Vladdy's, whatever it was, I guess the hitting streak, however many games it was. He'd hit 9 home runs and struck out 7 times. So he hit more home runs.
Using the whole field.
Then struck out and looking very much like the guy we saw a couple of years ago. And
bottles this. That's the key, right? Bottle it. Tell it to a hitting coach. Pick one.
It's a key for the Blue Jays.
Absolutely.
Key for the Blue Jays to bottle Vladdy.
How about that? Yeah, good luck.
Bottle him up and put him on the shelf for about 8 to 10 years. We'll see if that happens. Bill Shaikin is the national baseball writer with the LA Times. Joins us now on Blair and Barker. Bill, how you doing, man?
Good afternoon. How are you?
Doing well. Hey, we talked about we talked about Mike Trout when he went in the IL, and we had a couple of people on talking about it. But I wanted to talk to somebody who's covered him for a while and is familiar with the baseball scene in L.A. What I'm going to ask might seem like a silly question, but I'm going to ask it anyhow. Given everything that's going on in L.A. baseball, is Mike Trout still a big deal in L.A.?
Well, yes. Now, remember, the Angels don't play in L.A. They play in Anaheim. They just call themselves L.A. So in Anaheim and in Orange County, home of Disneyland and the Angels, yes, Mike Trout is still a very big deal. Having said that, this is the fourth straight year that he hasn't made it through the season, and he's still got 6 years left on a contract.
Bill, do you think when he does come back, they will move him? First baseman, everyday DH. They'll put restrictions on him when he's on the bases. I mean, they got to figure out some way to keep him on the field, no?
I'm sure they will have that conversation because they don't need to rush that conversation now since he's not coming back this year. That said, it's been 4 different injuries in each of the 4 years. Last year it was a broken hamate bone, which is what you get when you swing too hard or swing awkwardly. It's a random thing. It happens to a lot of hitters. Mm-hmm. If you were DHing, he'd have the exact same risk. So, would it help to get him off the field and minimize his running? Probably. Is that what they're going to do? I have no idea. I mean, the one thing you can say is that up until this year, the Angels had Shohei Ohtani, so DH was not an option. Mm-hmm. But now and going forward, they clearly do not have Shohei Ohtani, and for Mike Trout, that would be something to look at.
Yep.
Is there any way that, you mentioned he's got 6 years left in the contract. There's a lot of money left in that deal. Is there any way, Bill, that at some point ownership, management, Trout's people sit down and just try to come to some sort of, I don't know, arrangement that better opens the possibility of Mike Trout being traded or something like that? Like, I understand I'm reaching for straws here because 6 years is a long time and a contract is a contract is a contract. But I'm just wondering if the relationship between these two sides is strong enough that they could come to some sort of conclusion that this just isn't working.
They could, but Mike would have to be in charge of that. He has the full no trade protection.
Right.
And to his credit in this era, he has not wanted to leave. He's had 2 chances to be a free agent, and both times he never even got close to going on the market. He signed an extension more than a year in advance, both times, because he didn't want to deal with that. His role model growing up was Derek Jeter, who, of course, played his whole career with the Yankees. Now, granted, the Yankees won multiple world championships during that time, and the Angels haven't won a postseason series with Mike Trout. Not, of course, Trout's fault at all. But, could it get to a point where he gets frustrated and wants to think about going somewhere? It could. Has it happened yet? No. Could it have happened after, any of the last 10 years where the Angels haven't made the playoffs? Yeah. And Mike's stuck in there. I think the other problem is, or challenge, I guess might be a better word, he's got more than $200 million left on his contract.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about the Mike Trout who was winning 3 MVP awards in the last decade, great. You get some value. Now, I'm sure another team would say, well, that's great, but that's not the Mike Trout we'd be getting. We'd be getting a Mike Trout that has had trouble staying on the field the past 4 years. He turns 33 actually this week. So you're looking at the back end of his 30s. So no team, I don't think, is going to pick up the contract in its entirety. And then the Angels are faced with the question of, are we paying Mike Trout to go away? Mm. Are we spending down the contract of the best player we've ever had so he can play for somebody else? And those are considerations only ownership could answer.
Bill, no matter how the next 5 or 6 years goes for Trout, he is a surefire Hall of Famer, yes?
I wrote a column about that this week because somebody had asked me that question. And I think the main thing to consider is he was so dominant in the last decade. He was the best player in baseball for a decade. And that's got to stand for something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at WAR, which is becoming the predominant metric for the Hall of Fame, he's already one of the top 50 players in baseball history. So I think as the voting base gets younger every year, as older voters retire and younger voters take their place, that makes it more likely that Trout will have absolutely no trouble getting in. But I think if we were back 20 years ago, 25 years ago, if the next 6 years of his contract are like the last 4 and he can't stay on the field for a decade, then you got to wait 5 years before you can get your name on a Hall of Fame ballot after you retire, you might have some voters who are like, well, last 15 years, what do I remember this guy?
Yeah.
You know, he was going to get 600 home runs. He's not now. He was going to get 3,000 hits. He's not now. Does that matter? And I think, fortunately for Mike, you know, in this era, I don't think it matters. But 25 years ago, it might.
I think you're absolutely right with that. I'm just thinking back to when I first cast my first Hall of Fame vote, I think people were more inclined to look at things like that. You know, I think now too, there's also, this gets to your point, Bill, I become more of a fan of looking at a player's peak productive seasons, and it's hard to look at Mike Trout and not come away thinking this guy's a first ballot Hall of Famer. If he isn't, there's no such thing.
Yeah, I mean, to use another example from LA, Sandy Koufax had a peak where he was the best pitcher in baseball for 5 straight years. He got into the Hall of Fame based on 5 years. Wasn't his fault. His elbow was acting up.
Mm-hmm. Today
they would have done surgery. Back then they didn't have that option, and Sandy just wanted to retire so he could lift his arm for the rest of his life, which I don't think anybody could have any complaints about. But he got in off 5 years. Mike Trout's equivalent of that is 8 years.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think there's any doubt that he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. But you are right. 20 years ago, you might have had people.
Games played was important, I think.
Well, and I also think 20 years ago, you also had the same thing. And Bill, and this used to drive me nuts, but, there were people out there that just don't believe anybody, not many, but there were some voters who don't believe anybody's a first ballot Hall of Famer back in the day. And that's a topic for another time.
No, Bill, I think the Dodgers and the Phillies are playing. Glasnow's pitching. How important is this series for the Dodgers?
I think it's important, but not so much in terms of how they measure up against the Phillies, just that they're starting to get back some of the guys that they've been waiting for. Freddie Freeman had an unfortunate family situation. His son was very sick, but they've managed to get his son back from the hospital and back home, and it looks like, thank God, everything will be okay. So Freeman's back tonight. The Dodgers are talking about Mookie Betts coming back. They think this time next week. They have Walker Buehler out on rehab. They have one of their best relievers, Brusdar Graterol, is supposed to come back this week. So they're making some progress there. And, of course, they just traded for Jack Flaherty, which helps their rotation immensely. So I think they're looking forward to seeing, all right, we always talk about all the options we have because Andrew Friedman's team always has a million options, but are we going to get our best lineup out there? And I think they're getting close to doing that for the first time in months.
Bill, do we need to continue to pay attention to the Padres going forward here, even after LA gets their players back and gets healthy? Is this a better positioned Padres team, I guess, than last year's team or maybe even the year before, in your mind?
I think it is because of the way baseball is played this year. So normally you look at a team that has Joe Musgrove out on the injured list. Yu Darvish is dealing with some family matters, and no one on the Padres knows when he may come back. Okay, you've got Dylan Cease. He just threw a no-hitter, and then that's where you want Musgrove and Darvish. But in this day and age, as we all know, we're talking about Sandy Koufax. You get to October, you throw him out there, he throws 2 complete games in 4 days, and you win the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you get 4 or 5 innings out of your starter, that's good enough. 2 times to the order, and then we go to the bullpen. So what A.J. Preller, the Padres GM, did is say, you know what, instead of my trying to get a top starter, of which there weren't many available anyway, he went out and added to his bullpen. So right now, in addition to the Padres' own all-star closer, Robert Suarez, they got the Marlins all-star closer, Tanner Scott. The Padres right now have 5 guys at the back end of their bullpen that could fit in the back end of anybody's bullpen. So what you could see is in a short series, maybe the Padres don't win the division, although they're only 4.5 out. But have a guy start, pitch 4 or 5 innings. You got the extra off days in the playoffs. Let the bullpen cover the last 5 innings. You can make that work. Teams have done that. We've all seen that the last few years. And in a short series, I don't want to bring this up to anger any Dodger fans who are living in the province of Ontario, but a couple of years ago, 22 games is what separated the Dodgers and the Padres in the standings. But you got to October, Padres only had to win 3 against the Dodgers to knock them out, and they did.
Bill, we're going to let you run. Yeah. Thanks for doing this, man. Terrific stuff as always.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, take care.
See you.
Bill Shaikin is the LA Times national baseball writer. And his column in Mike Trout is interesting. Ross Newhan, who is the longtime baseball writer with the LA Times, reached out to Bill when Bill was at the Hall of Fame and asked the question, just out of interest's sake, does Mike Trout's injury, if Mike Trout were to get injured, would that factor into his Hall of Fame considerations? And Bill's absolutely right. Yeah, 15 to 20 years ago, I think there's some people who would have looked at it. It also depends on who else is on the ballot when you come out, right? Because not everybody picks 10. I'm not the only one who doesn't pick 10. There are a ton of people. But I mean, even with my goofy reasoning behind some of my Hall of Fame picks, Mike, I really do believe that there are some guys where you look at their peak years. Yeah. And Mike Trout had 8 years where there was no argument he was the best player.
Yeah, I think his deal was so big, though. It's what have you done for me lately? And lately, we haven't even seen you. That's the difference.
And the other thing, too, is 20 years ago or so, a player not performing up to the expectations of a big contract would be taken into account by some voters. See, I think the only difference is 20 years ago, Mike Trout wouldn't have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he probably would have gotten in at subsequent ballots. But I mean, I just can't. I can't imagine not.
I would think the 3 MVPs will get him in. It's just first ballot or not. If it continues to go and look the way it's looked the last however many years he's had the issue of not being able to stay on the field. And Bill's right. All these little weird injuries he's getting. I just don't know how the Angels keep him on the field.
Well,
I just don't know how to do it.
Yeah, that's, who did we have on last week that was talking about, you have to ask yourself, maybe, and I don't like doing this because, I haven't been a high performance athlete and I don't know how guys recover from injuries, but I think you also have to wonder, does he just take longer to recover than a lot of people? I don't know how you would is it that he's hurt so often, or that it just takes him so long to recover from those injuries?
Maybe it's he's so good at it that he would get an injury that nobody else gets because of how good he is at it. Maybe that's what it is.
I mean, when you're doing things other people can't do.
Well, it's crazy. I mean, it's just crazy the way he steals a base when he wants to steal it. He hits a home run, it seems like, when he wants to hit it. And
it does make you wonder,
catch a ball, doesn't it? I just don't know how they keep him on the field.
It does make you wonder if he played like 150 consistently, or 155 or 160 that's hard to do. But if he did that year after year after year,
I mean, he'd win like MVP after he would be fighting with Judge. We talk about that year after year after year after year after year.
I think Judge would be fighting with him.
Why? It would be. I mean, Judge is doing his own thing in his own right. Like his numbers would stand up against anybody's. I mean, it would just be the stolen base thing and the position you play, and now he's playing center, and it's like too bad for baseball that we don't get to have that conversation. I just don't know going forward what you do with him. Do you just say, "Wait, we pay you this, run out there as long as you can run out there"? Maybe that's it.
We mentioned the White Sox losing streak, and again, this I blame completely on Jerry Reinsdorf, their owner. Bringing back Tony La Russa completely.
Oh, he's the reason 2 years. What was that, 2 years ago?
Completely screwed up the karma around that team. There's a couple interesting articles on it. You go back and look at what people thought of that team 2 or 3 years ago. Look at the talent, look at the pitching. And something happened when Tony La Russa took over took over as manager. It's like something happened. I don't know what it is, but they have not recovered.
Something's in the Kool-Aid. I think they say winning's contagious. So's losing. I think that's what it is. I've been on now, not at the big league level. I've been on some bad teams in the big league style. Even when I played the Blue Jays, they weren't very good. But it's awful.
No,
I've never been,
not even on a bad team.
I've never lost this many games before in a row.
Can you imagine what that would feel like? Because you're doing it at the major league level. All the games are on TV. All the games are on radio. It's getting to be a thing now where national reporters are following. I mean, basically, you're a story because you stink. That can't be easy.
Yeah, I'd say that adds a little different element too, but also I would think it would depend on where you're at in your career, how much money you've made, where you're at with your contract, those kind of things. It gets very individual. It's like the Blue Jays right now, right? It's not about winning and losing. It's about individually seeing who's going to be a part of the future, who can help a team get off to a hot start next year. Mm-hmm. That's sort of where the White Sox are at, and just – you just talk about who what the manager said and how he's saying they don't hustle, they don't try. Like, it's like, man, like you just think before you speak kind of thing. And the players that matter are never on the field. Talk about Mike Trout. Talk about their team. Like they're just rarely on the field. And
the third losing streak in MLB history, the 1988 Orioles lost 21 games in a row. And the 1961 Phillies, and no, I don't remember them. They lost 23. I was only 1 year old then. They lost 23 games in a row, which is. I
just don't see any end in sight either. It's like you show up, and you're like, we're winning. No. It's like
Chicago's 0-16 since the All-Star break.
Wow.
They lost to the Twins this weekend. They're 0-7 in Minnesota. It's the first time they will have gone an entire season, because the Twins and them have been in divisions. It's the first time they'll have gone an entire season since 1981 without winning a game in Minnesota.
Why wouldn't you try and change it up in season and fire the coaching staff and just try and start?
Well, there's talk that they're going to rinse Pedro Grifol and name Charlie Montoya.
That's not what I'm talking about. We've seen Charlie manage. Absolutely. Like, get some new faces in there. Get some new voices. I mean, maybe that's what they need is a shakeup.
I was trying to remember which team. This is a few years ago. Basically, fired the major league staff. Now there were only 3 in AAA. The AAA manager, AAA coach, and AAA pitching coach brought them up and brought up a bunch of other coaches from their organization.
Why not? I mean, you can't get any worse. Like, your organization's the laughing stock of baseball.
Yeah, that's brutal, man.
Like.
I mean, it's
ridiculous.
It is nice seeing it happen.
You don't even know how to. You can't even trade your best pitcher when you want to.
No. I mean, think about that.
You can't. It's like you want to. Just come.
I mean,
we want to give them to you.
You're so. But just think about trying to explain this to somebody. Your best pitcher. You are so bad that you're going to set a record for losing, but your best pitcher didn't want to be traded away from you unless somebody gave him an extension.
Boy, you would think you want to do over? Man. I don't know why you just
what I hope happens?
You pick up the phone and go, would you take me?
You know what I hope happens?
Please.
You know what I hope happens? I hope that
he gets traded out.
No, I hope that the White Sox eventually end their losing streak, but that the guy to pitch in the last loss was Garrett Crochet, so that forever in history, he was the guy that pitched the last loss of that losing streak. That kind of vicious? Not really.
The world we live in, Jeff.
It is indeed. I got Jay's tickets to give away, speaking of the world we live in. We're going to talk about the Canadian women's team, won a bronze medal at the World Championships. And when we come back, Caleb Joseph joins us. Barker's going to take him out to the woodshed. This will be a lot of fun. You won't want to miss it. It's Blair and Barker on Sportsnet 590 The Fan and Sportsnet.
What's your reaction to seeing Blue Jays walk Aaron 3 times intentionally?
It sucks, and it just because you want him on the plate. Like I'm doing my best to put him up, and you see them pass him over. It's really, it makes me mad. I don't like that. I want them to challenge him and see what he can really do. But it is what it is. It's part of the game. They try to win too, so you respect that.
I mean, it was a lot stronger if we had just cut it off after he said it sucks, because then he kind of backed up a bit. They're just trying to win. This is Blair and Barker. That was Juan Soto. Not a fan of the Jays intentionally walking Aaron Judge, including once in the second inning with the bases empty. My argument would be the same as my good friend Kevin Barker's. Then don't hit Austin Wells behind him.
Yeah.
If it's an issue.
Austin Wells got 0 homers against lefties.
Well, I've been looking forward to this because these two gentlemen have been going back and forth all weekend. I'm told.
That's not true.
I'm told that they were setting the text machine on fire.
It was one little tiny text, and I had to call him back.
Time now for our MLB Insider, brought to you by Miller Lite. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only Caleb Joseph. Caleb, thanks for doing this. I'm stepping back. Barker's got a bone to pick with you.
There's no bone.
Barker, pick away, Barker.
There's no bone, but it is very curious how whenever a pitcher that is taken out of a game, I get a phone call from one of my good buddies asking me what the heck's going on. The world has ended. They've taken out Yariel Rodriguez with 76 pitches and want to allow him with a 2-0 lead to pitch to the meat of the order. Caleb, I want to ask you why you feel so strongly about not already knowing what Yariel is. Like, you needed to see him throw to one more hitter to know what he is. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
I wanted to see him get to 95 pitches and see what it looks like in a season where results don't matter anymore, and it's about the evaluation process, at least in my opinion. I want to see what this kid is made out of, especially considering that he didn't get out of the first inning in Baltimore. So if I'm a player, I'm trying to redeem that and trying to go as deep as possible, prove that I can go deep, that I can be, trusted in the 7th inning, in the 6th inning, 3rd time through the lineup, on the road, against a potent lineup. And I do understand there is a learning curve. There is a lot of adjustments that are probably going to be made with Rodriguez this next offseason in the pitching lab. I think they're going to shore up one delivery with one release point, no more of the kind of drop down stuff. That's what I'd like to see. I don't really mind the hesitation that he has at the top, but all of these different arm angles, I think that needs to get shored up a little bit. But I know they're probably on a bit of a count with innings limit, but this isn't a 22-year-old kid. This is a grown man. He looks like a grown man, looks like he's built for some innings and was on the injured list earlier. He's got plenty of innings, in my opinion. I mean, I'm no scientist. I'm not part of the development plan team, but if I'm a player out there and I don't go into the 2nd inning in my previous start and I'm cruising, I want to keep going. And I think the shaking of his head, shows that he really wanted to keep going. Now, he came out and said that he understands now, and I get it too. Yeah. But I just disagree. I think when you have a guy that's going and he found a way to get out of that 1st inning, you let him keep figuring it out, keep pedal to the metal and keep building that confidence.
So I'm glad you asked about the shaking of the head. You're okay with that? Being a former catcher, guy coming off the worst start in the history of the sport, hasn't thrown more than 83 pitches in a start. Turn your thing on if you're going to talk to me.
It wasn't the worst start in
history. It was the history of the sport. It was a really, really bad start.
It was not the worst.
Handing the ball to the manager, walking off, shaking his, it's like at the 7th game of the World Series. And when I'm the guy that thinks, hey, you got a process here, and the process, you coming off a stinker, be lucky you get to do this, right? This is sort of where you're at. 10 starts into this thing. That was his 11th start, and you haven't thrown more than 83 pitches. And, they're sort of trying to tell you something with where they think you're at, not allowing you to pitch to the 2 best hitters on earth, 3rd time through the order. So, as a former catcher, what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's a great what's the word? I think it makes a lot of sense if you're in a championship season and you're 1 game out of a wild card spot, but they're not. I mean, this season doesn't matter. I mean, Lo Perfido's hitting at the top of the order. Ernie Clement's leading off. They've got De Los Santos playing 3rd base. Like, the season don't matter anymore. So now it's about, you get a free shot to take a look at what these guys can do. I don't want to be guessing next year in situations like this when you're apparently are going to be trying to win a World Series. I think you take the advantage of the season being lost and taking a little bit of the guesswork out of it. But again, that's just me. And if I'm 0 for 4 and I'm not in there the next day, I'm shaking my head because I want to be in there. And
Yeah.
I like the fact that he wants to be in there. You know, I do understand where the Jays are coming from. But, again, if he's not good enough to start and if he's not good enough to go to 95 pitches, then he shouldn't be starting anyways. He should be a bullpen piece.
Well,
so that's just kind of how I feel.
Sounds like they paid $32 million for a number 4 or 5 guy. This is what 4 and 5 guys look like. You don't get to face the third time through the order. Like, you got a number. When he reaches the number, whichever one comes first, the third time through, against the best hitters, or the number. Maybe that's what they're telling you.
Today.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's how the game is today.
Yeah.
And I do understand where they're coming from, and I do understand all the metrics, and I understand where they get all that. I disagree because I don't think a lot of guys are allowed to go there. They're not built up enough to go there. They're conditioned to only go 85 pitches. I think it's a culture that's been created. And so guys don't even know how to do it because they're not allowed to in the minor leagues. Now, just my opinion, but they lost that game in the 10th inning, you know, which if he goes an extra inning and a half, maybe they don't have to get to a certain point in the bullpen. Again, it doesn't matter. The games don't matter anymore. It's all about evaluation. But I understand where the game is at. I just disagree. I just disagree with where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
Caleb, they've got 3 games against the Orioles. Then you got the Athletics for 3, the Angels for 3, the Cubs for 3, the Reds for 3, the Angels for 4 more, then the Red Sox.
Don't call it a comeback.
No. But this is where I'm going with this. So the schedule's a little soft at that point. But then in September now you got the Twins, the Phillies, the Braves, the Mets, the Cardinals, the Rangers, the Rays, the Red Sox, and then you end with the Marlins. Other than the Marlins, all of those other teams will be or could be, I guess maybe with the exception of Texas, in and around a wild card spot or fighting for a division. Mm-hmm. If you're John Schneider, how do you strike that balance between – this is what you guys were talking about. How do you strike that balance between, okay, I got to find out, for example, I want to find out what Brendan Little is. I want to find out what De Los Santos is. I'm going to have, Will Wagner up here at some point. I'm going to have all these guys up here. How do you strike a balance between seeing those guys, but at the same time understanding that for the legitimacy of the game, you can't roll over against the Boston Red Sox or against the Braves. How do you do that and keep the clubhouse happy, Caleb?
Yeah, you turn the clubhouse into the spoiler gang. And I remember being on a team like this, a couple teams actually, where you sort of get sick pleasure out of being spoilers. And
that's really a thing, hey?
It's the only motivating factor because you know that your games are pretty much irrelevant. So now you're trying to ruin somebody else's season. And I used to feel that way as a catcher when I was going, 0 for 3. Every time I saw the other catcher, it's like, if I ain't getting no hits, you ain't either. And I was, no matter who it was, I was pulling out the best sequences I had, trying to throw the nastiest pitches to that guy because I didn't want him getting any hits either. And so I do remember being in a couple of those situations late in the season in September where a couple teams were jockeying back and forth, much like the Yankees and the Orioles are right now. And we would take 2 out of 3 from them, and it kind of sets them back. And they're coming in a little bit relaxed, thinking, okay, we just show and go, and we're going to beat the tar out of this team because they're having open tryouts in the big leagues. And you kind of sneak up on them, and it sends a bit of a jolt into their system. I remember years ago, the Red Sox didn't make the playoffs because they lost, I think it was game 162 against a really, really bad Orioles team. And so you do get a little bit of sick pleasure out of that. I think at this point you have a pretty decent idea of kind of what you have in Clement, in kind of Horwitz. And if they really, really think some of these guys are going to get a legit shot at grabbing a 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th spot on the team, you got to really give those guys as many looks as you can, like a Lo Profido, some of the names you just mentioned that could fit into the mix. I don't know how that works because for me, left field and third base have to be big boppers, but you try and get those guys in as much as you can while playing guys you really think that have a good shot at next year. And so that balance you try with the lineup to give the competitive edge, make it competitive for all 30 teams as they're trying to beat, the best team possible that the Blue Jays can put out there.
With what we've seen, Gausman, Bassett, and Barrios look like the last, I don't know, we'll throw a month in there, how they've looked, what they're expected to do to start the season going into at least early into the season. What would be your recommendation if you're a manager with these three guys on how you handle them at least the rest of the season? It's about 9 more starts between the three of them. How would you handle them if you're the manager?
Well, first off, I'm going to have a conversation with them and ask them kind of where they're at, see exactly what they think, what they want to do. They look tired to me. They just look tired. They look like they've been carrying a lot of weight for about 2 years, and they've done an admirable job, in my opinion. But at this point in all of their careers, they've only got so many bullets left. And if I'm the Blue Jays and I'm heavily invested in next year and heavily invested in those 3 starters, I'm not trying to waste any bullets on a wasted season. So I think it could end up being where some of the off days are used to maybe even skip a start, maybe every other start for those 3 guys. Could be some really shortened starts in terms of innings. I wouldn't even mind bringing up a couple other starters and just kind of a phantom DL type stint. I don't want to use any extra bullets. It's one thing if they're 24, they're still trying to figure it out, and these are great reps for young players to play against good teams, and it really, quote, not matter in a low-pressure situation. But all 3 of these guys, they're obviously way beyond that point. And so that's how I would handle it. It would first start with a conversation. You might have a guy like Chris Bassett that says, nope, I'm going out there every day, and I'm going to try and pitch a complete game. And, okay, go ahead. Gausman, how do you feel? Barrios, what do you think? I think Barrios probably is the one guy that might keep going just because he's still trying to figure some stuff out. Gausman, to me, just looks tired, and Bassett is just who he is. He's just a fighter. So I could see a combination where Bassett just continues to go, Barrios continues to go, and Gausman might take a start or 2 off here and there, and maybe even not finish his last 3 or 4 starts. But that's just a guess. I'm totally guessing there.
We talked a little bit about Vladdy at the start of the show. He has been named the AL Player of the Week. Probably no surprise considering the heaters he's on. Caleb, I know that you're a teammate of his too. When Vladdy's going well, what is if I said to you, what's the one thing I have to look for? And I don't even need to see the numbers or the results. I just can look at it and I can go, okay, Vladdy's in his zone. What would that be?
Tempo. I think it's huge for him. Just the very first move off of the ball, the tempo at which he gathers. There's a lot going on. We've seen it over the last couple of years that when the tempo is fast, things start to break down, doesn't move very well going back. It's a late toe tap into an early jump forward, which moves the head. But when his tempo is good and when he moves as soon as the pitcher moves, typically right when that pitcher gets to about the top of his leg kick, that's when Vladdy has moved into his toe tap. When he does that, that barrel tips, and it's almost as if he's just waiting for the pitcher to start moving down the mound. That's when Vladdy starts to move and separate. He gets a really good separation. When he's not rushed, he sees the ball like a beach ball, which then allows him to really let it get deep and have good direction. And I've always said this, for a player that doesn't panic on a high-velocity fastball on the inner half and feels like they're moving slow to that ball but can still get the barrel to it, that's a very dangerous hitter because then they can even let that ball travel more against breaking balls. It's exactly what Vladdy looks like he's doing right now. He is catching fastballs in deep and shooting them to right field, not just for singles but for extra base hits. I think he got one on Garrett Cole on a backup cutter in yesterday's game that was on the inner half, slow to it, very good tempo, didn't panic. That's a ball that 4 months ago he would have really tried to hit to the pull side, would have yanked, would have been out in front early, a lot of head movement, hit it 112 into the ground to third base, 5-3, see you later. But he stayed on it. Direction was really good. Right center field double, like it was nothing. He's playing video games right now when it comes to his hitting. And for me, it's all about the tempo of the first move off the ball when he gets that toe tap and gathers. Everything starts to fall in place when he does that.
Give me a player that you're looking for that maybe you're on the fence about. You can't make up your mind the next however many games. Now, it's a guy that's going to get some run. Maybe a Barger, maybe a Schneider's going to get some more run. Loperfido, he just got here. Looks like steel, sort of the breaking ball, the elevated fastball. Is there one guy you're going to really be paying attention to? You just can't make up your mind. Maybe David Schneider. Is he going to be on your team next year? Give me a name that you're looking at going forward here that everybody should be paying attention to.
I think Brendan Little is incredibly intriguing. I really like what I see out of him, and I like the action. I like the at-bats that a lot of lefties have against him. They're not really good, but the ERA just isn't good, and there are times when he looks like he is the man. There are times when he looks like he can be that dominant piece in a bullpen, and then there are other times where he does not know where the ball's going. And I'm really looking at him because, for me, you've got to have players, and hopefully multiple players, that are at the minimum contract, whether it's first 3 years at the minimum or via arbitration, to start offsetting some of these costs so that you can spend some big money on some corner outfielders. And I really feel like the more of those type of players, especially in potential bullpen roles, the better off the organization is going to be. I'm also really intrigued by Lo Perfido. I do think that there's a little bit more power in that body than what kind of meets the eye. He looks to me like he's got a little bit of Kyle Tucker in him, kind of the way the hands move. I do love the adjustability in his swing. He looks like he can really hinge kind of at the midsection right around the belt, really kind of get barrel to ball. Sometimes it's not going to be 115 miles an hour, but he's got adjustability. And if he can really kind of turn into a thumper, maybe he could take one of those spots in left field. I'd love to see a proven veteran out there. Maybe a reunion with Teoscar Hernandez. I love Santander. But, I do think you got to have a lot of those guys, in my opinion, that are 0 to 3 that you have cost control over. Little and Lo Perfido are the two that I've really got my eye on.
Good job, buddy.
Yeah. No, I think, and I mentioned this to Kevin as well. That was one of the reasons when Yariel Rodriguez came out. That's something I wanted to see. I wanted to see Little in that moment against those.
How'd it go?
No,
yeah.
But on the other hand,
is different.
But Caleb's right. I mean, you've talked about him. There are times where you think that you really have something here. There are other times you just kind of throw your hands up and go, where was the guy we saw 2 outings ago?
In Boston against Devers. He had an outing, maybe it was 3 or 4 weeks ago in Boston, where he's in the exact same position. Game was on the line. And, man, he was strutting around. He got Devers on some nasty pitches. And I thought, man, Jays have something here. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Aaron Loop, just kind of the way he kind of shrugs off the field a little bit. Obviously, totally different arm angle, but that's what I want to see. Like, it's in there. And so when you see it once, it's in there. Now, obviously, it's about repeatability and adjustability. So that's why I've got my eye on him, because I think he can be that guy, but I need some more. I need him to really finish out strong to be a lock for next year.
Now, just when you came on, we played a clip from Juan Soto, who was not very happy that the Jays intentionally walked Judge 3 times. I mean, I didn't have an issue with it. We'll see the Orioles up close for these next 3 days. But both Kevin and I think came away from that Yankee series. Like, look, Judge and Soto were great, but I don't know, Caleb. I don't think I'd be running away from hiding them if that's the team I get in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, there's still quite a few question marks. I mean, the fact that the Blue Jays, with what some would probably call a spring training lineup, really played tough games against them, that kind of tells you everything. And, they had the issue with Gleyber Torres not running out of the box. And I do think Jazz Chisholm is going to really put a spark into that lineup. He plays with a ton of energy, and he talk about adjustability. He's not afraid to just kind of shoot something to left field. Obviously, the pop is pretty real from a small guy, and I think over the course of the next 2 months at Yankee Stadium, he's going to get some home runs to right field. I could see him kind of being a Didi Gregorius type.
Yep.
But at the same time, when you're a visiting player going into that stadium against that team, there's 2 guys that aren't going to beat you. And I don't care how much it makes you mad, Juan Soto, you're not beating me. Like, it's just not happening. And if you don't like it, tell that big 6'4", really muscular guy that bats right-handed and has a really close stance to start, raking some balls and get behind him. So you're 4 and 5 guys deep, and you can't pitch around them. So it's like people getting angry because the Chiefs throw the ball. I mean, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, they're going to throw the ball because they're really good at it. Like, why would they run just to make it interesting? Well, I'm not going to pitch to Judge just to make it interesting. If I'm trying to win the game, you're going to do your best to win the game. So, and I appreciate that from Schneider. And you know what? To be honest with you, I didn't want to see him swing anymore either because he hits it out of the park every time he swings.
Okay, last one. Let's roll this back around to the Jays, and I forgot to ask you about Alejandro Kirk and the playing time thing. What do you need to see going forward here? Is it just that he can write his name in the lineup, or do you need to see it on both sides of the ball to know that he's the guy going forward here?
Yeah, great question. I think Blue Jays fans and Blue Jays staff and Blue Jays coaches, I think they have a really good idea of what they have in Kirk in terms of the framing, in terms of the potential to hit. I think, to be honest with you, the question mark is going to be stamina. I think it's totally about stamina, and I'm not afraid to come out and say that I'm not 100% sure that he can hold up for 100 games behind the plate throughout a long, grueling Major League season. And that is their question. I don't think it's going to be, can he actually produce? I think he's going to produce what he produces. I think they have probably a 650 to 725 OPS built in somewhere in there. And if he goes off, great. But you're going to get really good framing. You're going to get pretty solid blocking and pretty decent pitch calling behind the plate. It's just a matter of how many games can you get that version versus trying to push him to 115, 120, and now everything starts to dip down because it does wear on you. That position is absolutely grueling, and you have to be in tip-top form mentally, physically, emotionally to get through a Major League season. It just does so much to your body in all of the different phases. If you're not ready to do it, it will bite you in the rear. So I think it's all about how he comes into camp and how they feel like they can work him to keep him at tip-top shape.
Caleb, we're going to let you run, man. Thanks for doing this, as always. Sorry, Barker was sorry. I let Barker have free run with you, man.
We agree on just about 99.9,
yeah.
So that 0.01% is pretty good to have fun with.
Well, I expected you to come a little hotter with it. You were pretty, under control with your words, and I expected more from you. Okay.
Well,
next
if
time.
you'd have called me 10 minutes after the move, I'd have been cursing, like a sailor. But I've had 24 hours to let it sit and just realize this is where our game is. And if you don't like it, just watch football.
There it is. Yeah.
Take care,
Way
man.
to go,
Be
buddy.
well.
See you later. Be good, guys.
Yep. Caleb Joseph, Blue Jay Central analyst. Whoa, almost lost it. Sportsnet 590, the fan analyst as well. Again, today's an off day for the Blue Jays. 3-game series against the Orioles. It's at 7:07 tomorrow. And then it's, as I said, the schedule gets softer, but then you look in September and they're gonna be. I wonder that spoiler. I've often wondered about that spoiler thing, and I guess it kind of makes sense, isn't it? Because you made this point that there are a lot of guys who are on this team who are playing for next year. They're to establish themselves, and maybe if you're a guy, I don't know, a guy like Ernie Clement, being able to do that and maybe stick a fork in a team along the way.
I mean, I wouldn't get too crazy. Their bullpen's not real good, and the big three in the rotation, I'd be careful with. So, they may not even be pitching a ton. But yeah, I mean, the offensive everyday guys.
That's what I'm talking about. The ability.
Vladdy hit 30 homers. That's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Do that. That's a really good year.
Caleb Joseph was our MLB insider, brought to you by Miller Lite. Tastes like Miller time. We will be joined in the next segment by Mia Valcke, who played for the Canadian women's team, bronze medal winning team at the 2024 World Cup. This weekend in Thunder Bay. They beat Mexico in Thunder Bay. Interesting story. She's the, I think, one of only, well, we'll talk to her. I think she's one of only 2 players to represent Canada in women's baseball and softball.
That's awesome.
As well. And did you play softball?
Who?
You?
No. I tried once, almost killed myself.
Different.
Swing too hard.
Yeah.
Under control. I don't do anything under control, Jeff.
I just thought that maybe fastball would be.
Fastball what?
Fastball, that you would have tried it at some point.
I don't know what that is. What's fastball?
That's softball.
We'll call it softball.
Yeah, it's called fastball too.
Where? Who calls it that?
It's called fastball in Western Canada, man. The Western Canadian Fastball League used to be.
It's like back catcher.
No, it's not like back catcher. Softball is like lobbing the ball in.
Call that. Oh, you're talking about underhand.
Yes.
Well, okay. No, I've never played it.
I've never
a slow pitch. I was thinking about.
Oh, okay. I wonder.
No, I've never played either one of them.
I thought maybe you might have. I thought maybe it might have. So she'll join us in a few minutes as well. I think I'm going to do the trivia question right now. We've been giving you the chance to win Blue Jays tickets all season long here on Blair and Barker. All you have to do is text the correct answer to our daily baseball trivia question to 590 590. Standard message and data rates may apply. Our last question and answer was, this starter was an all-star for the Blue Jays and also played for the Orioles and the then Tampa Bay Devil Rays. His one stop outside of the AL East was with the Reds in 1999. The answer was Juan Guzman. Today's question is a fun one. Today's question is to win tickets to see the Jays and A's at the Rogers Center on Friday, August 9th. This pitcher is best known for his time as a World Series champion with the Giants, but he also had a short stint with the A's and an even shorter stint with the Blue Jays. Did you have gotten this?
No.
Again, this pitcher is best known for his time as a World Series champion with the Giants, but also had a short stint with the A's and an even shorter stint with the Blue Jays. You can text the answer to 590 590 for your shot to win. See rules at sportsnet.ca/590. Standard message and data rates may apply. Mia Valcke will join us next. It's Blair and Barker on Sportsnet 590 The Fan and Sportsnet.
Ground ball through the hole on the left side. That's a base hit. Canada with the go-ahead run. A 2-out hit from Mia Valcke, her second of this game.
Canadian women's baseball team ended up winning the bronze medal this weekend in Thunder Bay, the 2024 WBSC Women's Baseball World Cup, beating Mexico 4-2. On Saturday, there were 3 members of the Canadian team to make the all-tournament team. One of them is our next guest, who, as you heard from that clip, was very much front and center in the bronze medal game and in the games leading up to it. Mia Valcke joins us on Blair and Barker. Mia, thanks so much for joining us today. Congratulations on the medal. We, both Kevin and myself, had a chance to attend the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame induction this year when Ashley Stevenson went in. And she gave a very impassioned speech about opportunities for women, not just in baseball in Canada, but sports in general. And I think it's kind of interesting that at a time where the Canadian Olympic team is so dominated by successful women, that we're also seeing women have success on the baseball field. I'm just wondering, from your point of view, what is the state of the game right now for Canadian women, and where do you think it needs to go to grow?
Yeah, I mean, it's growing quickly. I think, when I was 16, there were not as many opportunities as there are now. It's kind of amazing. I played in a league in Quebec this summer, the Canada East League, and there was 4 really competitive women's teams playing against each other all summer. And I think that's what it's all about, right? If we can create more opportunities for young women to play baseball. I had to kind of make a decision to pursue softball if I wanted to play post-secondary, which, I love softball and I loved where that took me. But it's a completely different game, right, with baseball. And just to see how far it's come since I was 16 and first made the national team to where it is now, it's just really exciting. And I hope that 16-year-olds now don't have to make that decision to switch to softball if they want to pursue a post-secondary opportunity.
Mia, what can you take away from the experience of playing against different countries? That's pretty cool. Sounds pretty cool. What's the experience like? What can you take away from that?
So much. Playing a team like USA versus a team like Japan, it's a completely different game, right? Like USA are just a powerhouse. Our outfield, our back, I'm playing deep. All of them have power, right? We're not really expecting bunt. And then we have Japan, who just their execution is something I've never seen before. I think they bunted like 8 times against us. I just never seen a team do that before and execute so well. And then there's teams like Mexico and Venezuela, and they are louder than any teams I've ever played before. So it's such a cool experience getting to play different countries, but I think also we got a chance to meet everyone after the tournament and spend some time together and got the opportunity to build some pretty cool relationships as well.
You mentioned that, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you were the second person to represent Canada internationally at a high level in both softball and baseball. And I know you talked about the post-secondary opportunities, especially in the States, are much greater for softball than baseball for women. I asked Barker if he'd ever played softball or fastball, or we used to call it in Western Canada. He kind of looked at me like I had three heads, which is normal. But understanding the difference in the game, everything, right?
Yeah.
The pitching and everything like that. In terms of skill set, is there a difference that you notice between baseball and softball in terms of sort of specific skills you need to develop?
Yeah, it's so funny, right? Because I think a lot of people use the sports interchangeably, but they are so incredibly different, even though they look almost the same, right? The field size is different. The bases are closer in softball. I think the biggest difference, though, would be pitching. Like, pitchers are so much closer in softball. So in terms of hitting, in baseball, I have to work really hard to sit back. That's what it's one of my biggest weaknesses. But, I just have more time, right? I can see the pitch, balls coming down, curveballs are coming down, and then we have softball so much closer. I don't have time to have this, big load. Timing pitchers is different. We have rise balls coming into play. Now I have a ball coming up at my eyes instead of going down. So I think hitting is a huge difference. And then, on defense, it's just at short, I cannot pick up a ball and take a couple steps and make a throw. Like, it is like boom, boom. Got to be quick. So I think the pace is probably the biggest difference. As well as, just the distances are much smaller in softball.
Mia, what's it take to be a clutch hitter? I know you were 5 for 5. You had 3 RBIs in one game there. What's the key? Like, what do you have to do? What do you have to tell yourself before you go to the plate?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm really proud of that game, but my other games, it was, 1 for 4, 2 for 4 at best. Which is also the beauty of this Team Canada, right? Is that I don't have to be going 4 for 4, 5 for 5 every game for us to be successful. So I'm really proud of the group that I can, feel that support and have some of that pressure taken off. But that was a good game. I had to make some adjustments, right? Like, I didn't feel like I was clutching up for my team in big moments at that point in the tournament. I had a lot to do with my load, kind of where I started my hands. And, in those high pressure situations, like, I just want to come and clutch for my team. That's all I'm thinking about. But I just had to go back to my basics, like, trust my swing, try not to change too much, just kind of change where I started my hands. And that game, I just was able to execute. And I was, very happy with my performance that night, that I could help my team out.
Very cool.
Now, I know that, if you talk to people who, for example, play soccer, they'll tell you there's a big difference between tournament soccer and league soccer. Is there a big difference between, because you said you played in the league in Quebec this summer, between, not just in terms of caliber, but just in the way the games are played, between league baseball and tournament baseball? Is there, it would seem to me that the momentum in tournament baseball is so much more important.
Yeah, I think we faced that this week. Like I said, I'm so lucky that I was a part of that league this summer. I got to play so many games every week against other female teams. It was amazing. And I was very proud of all the progress that I made. And then I'm here at the World Cup, and now I'm, starting off the tournament, not executing the way I want to execute. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, I've been doing so well all summer in this league. But, we're playing the best of the best. We're playing Japan, USA. Like, they have pitchers throwing mid-80s. Like, that's something I'm not really facing in that league. So, yeah, it's a huge adjustment. And the pressure, right? This is my 4th World Cup. But it was the same amount of pressure, same amount of excitement, same amount of, determination I had to want to win. And pressure can add up in these tournaments. And I think our team faced that. And luckily, we were able to push through after a couple tough losses. But yeah, it's a completely different atmosphere at a World Cup.
Now that you've been through 4 World Cups already, what would you tell? So your first World Cup, you would have been how old? 16?
16, yeah.
16. What would you tell your 16-year-old self now?
A few things. I've thought about this before. I think to embrace the pressure. I think when I was 16, the nerves were there. I was used to kind of being a starter on my team, and now I'm, the youngest player on the team, right? I was playing a much different role at that time, bullpen catching, filling waters, something I was not used to. And I, looking back, I don't think I was like, put me in, I was like, I'll let these older experienced girls take this heat. Like the World Cup was something I had just never experienced before. And now being 24, it's weird. I'm a veteran on the team, but like, I'm only 24. But I think just embracing the pressure, like, looking at it as a challenge, looking at it as, being lucky to be out here competing for my country. I get to play a sport that I love with people that I love at a high level. It was in Thunder Bay this summer, which was so amazing to play in front of our home crowd. I think embrace the pressure and honestly have fun. I think, like I said, as a 16-year-old, like that pressure just made me nervous. But that now I'm looking at it like, let's go. Like I'm gonna attack these pitchers. I'm gonna make amazing plays and be there for my team.
Me and Jeff obviously want to help grow the women's game in Canada. Give us some advice. How can we do that, Mia?
Like, let's get it out there on like Blue Jays post for us, MLB post for us, Sportsnet. Like, man, you should have seen our center fielder this tournament. Like, I don't know. She made 3 of the most incredible catches I've ever seen in my life, to be honest. So like we can play, and I think we've seen it with women's basketball, the trajectory it's going on. And I don't think people understand the caliber that we're playing at. Like this summer, it was so impressive. The level of competition and people really, in Thunder Bay came to support us, and the amount of people afterwards that were just so blown away with the level of competition. Like, it's growing. We are good. We can play. And I think just getting it out there, like, spreading awareness that we can compete.
Boy, we've got an Olympics coming up in Los Angeles. That would be a good opportunity to do it.
That'd be a dream. We're fighting that fight continuously. I know baseball and softball are scheduled to be in that, but I do believe it's just men's baseball and women's softball. But yeah, women's baseball, we can compete. And as well, our men's softball national program is amazing and is growing as well. So we're fighting. We're fighting to be in 2028 LA.
Mia, we really appreciate you joining us today. Thanks so much. Congratulations. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
That was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Take care. That's Mia Valcke. And if you have spent any time around Canadian baseball, you'll know her father, Tom. He was former CEO of the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. I mean, he's done a ton of stuff in baseball, managed, coached, been an administrator. So she comes by her passion, honestly. But I had a chance to talk with some people at the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame induction this year, and it is puzzling. And I understand there's a lot of internal politicking going on, obviously, when it comes to the Olympics, right? There's a ton of stuff going on, but man, you would think that having an Olympics in LA, that it would be a golden opportunity.
You'd think so.
To have,
it'd be an easy window, right?
And you've got teams from Japan, you've got teams from the United States. There's obviously Canada, Mexico. There are teams from Central America. Like one of the stories, over the past however many years I've been covering sports, like probably since 1989, I started covering it. And I think people in my age maybe realize it more than a lot of other people. The growth in women's sports, between the WNBA, women's hockey, the Professional Women's Hockey League, I can't even, I had someone ask me the other day, since you've been around, the biggest changes you've seen? I said, it's women's sports. Yeah. I mean, by far. Like, I remember when I broke in writing at the Winnipeg Free Press, you covered a lot of women's sports because women's university basketball was a big thing in Manitoba. High school girls basketball was huge in Manitoba. Women's volleyball was huge, but it seemed as if there was that. It just broke once you got past the university level. Once every 4 years, the Olympics would come along and people would pay attention, and then they'd forget about it. But it would seem to me that given what we're seeing, the growth we're seeing in hockey and basketball in particular, never mind in Canada. I mean, let's be honest. Our Canadian women's athletes, no disrespect to us men, But the Canadian women athletes are the ones kicking ass.
Yeah, they are.
To be honest.
Yeah. Women like Mia is not going to let this go either, right? They're going to keep pushing this and
that's
trying
good.
to step
And that's
absolutely.
Good. So it
seems like it's in good hands.
Yeah, it would be great to see. It would be great to see women's baseball.
Tremendous.
Get an Olympic spot, and I understand there's a whole issue with media coverage around different sports and all that, and that's a long-standing battle that women's sports have been fighting for years. And I will say that the WNBA and the Professional Women's Hockey League, they found out one thing: especially the WNBA, is they got in everybody's face. You really have to do that. You got to get in everybody's face.
Yep.
And you just have to be. You have to keep pounding at that door until at some point people start saying, "All right, enough." And then once they let you in and people see the product,
me and you're going to do our job. We're going to continue to get the right people on and keep promoting it.
And it's. It is always a struggle, right? To make sure that it's not just something you talk about when the World Championships roll around or when the Olympics roll around. But again, congratulations to the women.
Stuff.
That is, what was I saying? They've won, it's like 5 bronze medals and 2 silver in 2018, 2016 for the Canadian women. And it was funny hearing Mia talk. I remember Ashley Stevenson talking about the story she told about facing the U.S. And what was the story about her? The coach came out and said to her, because Canadian women and the U.S. women hate each other.
They do.
In baseball. I was going to say women's. I was also going to say women's soccer was another sport that's made inroads. So
they wanted to put one of the power hitters on, and she's like,
said,
"I just can't.
Can I just hit her?" I said, "Well, no, that's
that's
not what we're doing. We're just gonna put her on. Can I just hit her? No."
I like Mia. You ask her about her swing, and she knows exactly what's going on.
So again, that's the thing, with women's soccer, women's hockey, women's basketball. I mean, give them a chance, and they can make things happen. That's something I was gonna talk about before. We need to touch on it earlier in the show. Blake Snell throwing his no-hitter. And, of course, the story about Blake Snell, the guy that was taken out of a World Series game.
Yeah.
He was a guy that got a little bit of action at the trade deadline. Maybe not a great deal. He's a guy that can opt out.
I would if I were him.
What do you think of him as a pitcher, Blake Snell?
I think he's exactly what you see. I think he sometimes is a guy that will stuff you to death in short spurts. But if the breaking ball's working like it was in his last start, he's unhittable. That's what I think. I think guys who are left-handed that throw that hard and pitch at speeds that he does with his fastball and can have the change of speed and the big break on the breaking ball the way it is, he is a 2024 khakis dream. That elevated power with the tunneling breaking ball off of that and the vertical break that he can do it at changing speeds and doing it at short spurts like he does. It's the efficiency which he tries to do it a lot and doesn't do it because of how hard he throws and how much they want him to throw secondary stuff, right? It's just a lot of the times, for me anyway, when I watch him, he's in between. He really don't know what he wants to do to try and attack hitters. That's why you sort of see him all over the map. But when he's locating them 2 pitches,
yeah, it was pretty.
Good luck.
It was pretty impressive.
Yeah,
they're an odd team.
They're odd's not the word I'd use.
They're just like I'm just.
Are they any good?
Well,
I mean, their pitching's off the charts.
They're 4.5 games back in the wild card.
It's just everything
else. Game under 5. Yeah, it's weird, and they're going to get. I kind of see. Going into the trade deadline, I thought that they might be a team that would be really active and might even be selling. But then getting Robbie Ray back, and they've got the pitching. It's that old. If they somehow get into the wild card, they can pitch you. But man, that lineup is.
There's a lot missing. Like to say, can they be the Diamondbacks in the playoffs? That's a question, right?
I don't think they have the Diamondbacks.
That's what a lot of teams are sort of shooting for. They're right. They don't have the regular season that they want, but get hot at the right time, get the right pitcher healthy.
That Diamondbacks lineup was way more dynamic than San Francisco's. Way more dynamic.
Yeah, I mean they hit homers when they were supposed to hit them. I think that's what it was. And they got lucky, and the Phillies didn't show up the last couple of games. But again, it's about what you done for me lately, and get hot at the right time, and get the right pitcher there, and get the right guys offensively doing the things at the right time. That's sort of what the Jays offensively front office has been trying to do for the last couple of years. Jeff, is get them in, get the right guy hot at the right time. It's just the right guy hasn't gotten hot.
Blake Snell, by the way, was the National League Player of the Week. Vladdy getting American League Player of the Week with a it's almost hard to say, 1.713 OPS.
You could say almost 1,200. You could say that. It's easier to say it that way.
1.713. I can say 1,700 would be better.
Okay.
Jays have tonight off. They'll start a 3-game series against the Orioles at the Rogers Center. We'll be back tomorrow from 4 to 6 Eastern, and we'll be doing Blue Jays Talk tomorrow night. Then I'm going to take a couple of days off and hand it over to, I believe, Mr. Bananas. So you guys will walk everybody through the final 2 games of that sweep against the Orioles.
Mr. Mark Shapiro is having his availability, whatever that. I think that's on Wednesday, maybe.
Yeah, but I think that's just. I don't know if that's like. I think that's just almost like a session with the media. I don't know if that's sit down in front of the TV cameras.
Yeah, but I'm sure there'll be some news that.
Well,
signing Vladdy.
I don't know.
Well, your GM coming back.
I mean, I hope. It'd be great
that'd be the first 2 things I'd ask.
It'd be great if they were announced that they're signing Vladdy.
I just don't. If it hasn't happened yet, why would make you think it's gonna?
What would make me think it's gonna is the fact that I've got ownership that is committed to spend money. I have more faith. You put it this way: I have more faith in ownership getting Vladdy signed than I necessarily do in the general manager getting him signed, if it makes sense.
Well, you know as well as I do, he wouldn't be signing Vladdy. It would be the president or the in the ownership. It would have nothing to do. I'm sure he'd throw his 2 cents in there, but I'm sure the final decision would be made with the higher up.
I think they're going to take a run. As I've said, I've got faith in ownership's backed up.
Taking a run and getting it done is 2 different things.
Well,
you know that.
Yeah.
And are they willing to spend more after that? Because it's just not enough.
It's the first step.
It's just not enough.
First step, though. It's the first step. I understand what you're saying. I
don't like that word process, but it is a process now.
You can't turn the spigot on and then turn it off. I get that.
They tried to do that 2 years in a row. Didn't work.
But you got to get you got to get Vladdy wrapped up first. We can move on from there at that point. I do find it interesting they have not given out a lot of a lot of contracts to their own guys to cover free agent years, like a lot of teams have done. But anyhow, we shall see where that goes.
Yeah.
We shall see where that goes. That is it for us. Fan pregame is next. Again, we will be back tomorrow from 4 to 6 Eastern on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. And Sportsnet Blue Jays baseball returns tomorrow. The Jays and the Baltimore Orioles. Enjoy the rest of your day.